What is up, everybody? It's Mudge. I am back here for another video. We're going to edit some photos that I took this morning. Hopefully the camera is a little bit better this time. You guys can see me nice and clear. So anyhow, I've just popped into Lightroom. I'm just scrolling along and looking at all of the stuff that I've put in here today. So here is the start. So essentially all I'm going to do, I think I've taken like 50 some photos this morning. What I'm going to do is we're just going to scroll through those. We're going to do the typical auto just so that I know which ones we want to look at. And then I will show you how I edit my simple outdoor product photos. So before we start though, the one thing that I will tell you is when you're taking outdoor photos for product photography, look for what you think might be interesting, number one. So have a cool location or multiple kind of little spots or somewhere like the forest that I have out front of my house to get that kind of cool vibe for what you're looking for, because products, certain companies will have certain values that they want you to kind of incorporate in the photos. So for instance, I'm taking more photos of the Holocene flavored vodka, and they are trying their very best to be the first carbon neutral distillery on Vancouver Island, or at least one of the carbon neutral distilleries on Vancouver Island. So for them, environmental friendliness is a big thing. So I'm just trying to incorporate some of the vibes. And of course, being a local Vancouver Island distillery, they want some Vancouver Island vibes when we're taking photos for them. So anyhow, that is number one. Number two, you got to look for some pretty good lighting. Right now, it's sort of overcast outside, so the light is pretty good. We don't have a lot of like harsh sunlight or anything like that. And being kind of under the canopy of the trees, we are able to get some pretty nice, even diluted light, if you want to say, or diffused light. So that is number two. And you can do this very simply with any camera. The only thing I used was this 50mm prime lens 1.8 by Sony. I'm using the A7 II, so this is an older version of the newer Sony cameras. It's a fantastic mirrorless camera. You don't need this. You can do this with a DSLR, whatever. You could, if you really want to, you can even probably do it with a film camera if you're feeling interested. Anyhow, we're gonna jump right in. Here is my very first photo. So this one's kind of cool. You can see in the background here, right around here, that there's houses and cars and all kinds of stuff. So the bokeh took really good care of keeping that out of my photo. So I actually quite like this photo. When you're using Lightroom, if you click this little button, this is the edit button, that'll pop out here. And you can see right now that I'm a little bit kind of underexposed. I generally expose my photos one stop below perfect exposure because I like to play with the light a little bit that way. So in this particular photo, we're just going to auto that. See how it just brightens everything right up. They've added a stop and a bit to the exposure to bring it up. Like I said, I'm basically one stop shy of perfect exposure, so they have brought that up. They've dimmed the highlights a bit. They've brought up the shadows, and they've upped the whites and lowered the blacks, and that is what you get on the auto. So auto does a pretty good job of kind of getting things to where you want them. So anyhow, let's just keep going through here. That one's kind of cool. Nothing crazy. Don't love that shot. And one of the things that you'll find too is once you hop into Lightroom and you see the photos that you've taken once they're in the computer, you get a little bit more of a gauge on kind of what you like or what you don't like. So I'm just going to auto that one because it's kind of an interesting shot. That's more of the same. I really like this shot. It kind of is just like the vodka's enveloped in moss, and it's really nice. And with all the greenery and everything, like we've kind of got some field of view here, like depth of field, so you can see the stuff that's a little bit closer is in focus, and then we got that nice bokeh in the background. So that's pretty sweet. I like that photo, so we're going to keep that one. This is another one that's kind of neat. It's in the same spot. I've just kind of laid the bottle down a little bit to make it almost like I'm shooting up. So that's another thing too, is dependent upon what you're shooting. For instance, the vodka, you kind of want to make it sort of look like powerful. You know what I mean? So shooting from an angle lower to make something tall or feel big is something that you want to do when you're shooting alcohol. It's just like, it's what they do. So anyway, we'll keep going through. That's more of the same, so we won't bother with that one. That's kind of a neat photo. We'll auto that one just so that we know that that's one we want to edit. I also took some shots for the Bohemian Soap Company. This is their tobacco scented, which smells unbelievably good. It's right here. They are a local company that is on Gabriola Island. And let me tell you, I probably will never use this soap because I like just smelling it like this. But they sell this at a local barbershop that my brother works at, where you can pick up some of your own products if you want to find the Bohemian Soap Company. I think they're also online, though it's kind of tough to find. So there is an email if you want to get at them and get some of this soap in your local shop. You can email the Bohemian Soap Co. at shaw.ca. So feel free to reach out to them. So anyway, I am going to auto that one. The soap ones I'm not as happy with. They're kind of meh, but as you'll see as we go through, we can take a look and see what looks great and what's kind of whatever. So we'll just auto the ones that I kind of want to edit up. That one's kind of cool. Outdoor. I think I got a closer one. Yeah. So these are actually turning out pretty cool. So like I said, I just auto these just so that I know which ones I want to edit. This is not what my final edits are going to look like, so I will walk you through all of that. But I just wanted to show you that it like brings everything up. You can see on the histogram, we've got the blues, the reds, the greens. Everything's kind of in the middle except for the blues, but that's because this soap has that blue logo. So we can adjust all of that kind of stuff in post. And this is kind of a cool one of Flipper Vodka. I found two stumps that were kind of like locked in, and the nice thing is that stump, the one log has kind of a leading line in. So if you look right here, I've got it kind of on an angle so that I can have that come into the shot and just kind of lead your eye to the vodka. So that's something to think about too. I've got a few leading line shots. This is another one that I like. And I did the same with the soap at some point here. There's the soap. We'll auto that one. Just so that we have a few things to kind of go over. And my edits are honestly really simple. So I try to just showcase the product that I'm working on. So whether that's indoor or outdoor, you want to have the vibe that you like. So using a product with like a similar, for instance, with the vodka, when I do an indoor shot, I take a glass and throw a cigar and a tobacco pipe in there. You can even sprinkle some tobacco all over the ground, if you will, for texture, because texture is really important when you're taking these photos, but lighting is the biggest challenge. So for me, when I'm trying to do these photos, I will try and capture the vibe I'm going for. So for instance, with this, the Bohemian Soap Company, it's a local Gabriola Island company, which is just kind of a short ferry ride across from where I live here in Nanaimo. So I wanted to showcase their stuff, and being a local Vancouver Island kind of company, I thought the outdoor look would be good. And I believe that these guys are like pretty environmentally friendly. Like it has coconut oil, water, tobacco leaf fragrance oil, and activated charcoal. So there's not a whole lot in here. I think that they probably use lye as well, or tallow or something for these soaps, but it's a company that's environmentally friendly again, so doing some of the outdoor stuff I think is a cool vibe. So I think I've captured that in this particular photo. I've got a couple more here. This one's kind of whatever, but we're going to use it just to kind of showcase what we're doing here. That's another nice one. I kind of like this foreground here, so we'll auto that guy. That one's a better shot as well. So like I said, we're going to go through and we're going to touch all of these up a little bit more. This one was kind of cool. So I've got this leaf coming in from the side. I put it in the hole in the stump. That looks really cool. And I did the same with the vodka in another shot here. So we will go over. And some of these I think I shot at 5.6 so I could get a little bit more of the background and everything in focus, but it still has a nice bokeh, but the bottle is fully in focus. There's no kind of focal points that are taken away. So like when you have your full aperture at 1.8, it's going to like go for the local and start blurring out everything else. So I just upped it to, it might actually been 3.4. We can figure that out. So we'll just keep going through these. I mean, a lot of these I actually like. They turned out pretty good. I did a couple that are just a little bit off, but I like the middle ones. That one's kind of nice. So we'll do this. That one's really cool. You're showcasing the product, right? The product has to be the focal point. So that's another one. This is where I changed my aperture a little bit. So a bit more of the background kind of not in focus, but it's starting to get more in focus. You've got less of the blur. That was one of the last shots I took. There we go. We'll do that. And then I took these inside. So those ones, kind of whatever. I don't really care to work on those guys. So we're going to scroll back, kind of where we started here. We'll start from this first shot. So effectively, Lightroom takes it all up. Like I said, I'm usually one stop, so Lightroom has brought this guy up, and I actually quite like the exposure that they've used here. So what I typically do is you can mess around with the tone curve. I have yet to get good with this. So practice makes perfect when you're messing around with the tone curve, but basically you can adjust your lights and your darks, your exposure, you can adjust your reds, greens, and blues. So this one's kind of, it's neat to mess around with. Like that really brightens it up in that one section, so I actually don't mind it there. But what I'm going to do is leave the temperature, leave the vibrance and the saturation. I don't want to mess around with that too much. I actually really like the outdoors. Some people say that that's distracting. That is personal. You don't have to listen to them. You do whatever you want to do when you're editing your photos. So for me, I typically like to bring up the texture. So if I roll this all the way up, you can kind of see that stuff starts getting really like, not in focus, but it looks sharp, kind of cartoony. So I usually bring that up a little bit. Clarity is kind of the same. It's an interesting tool, but it makes it really cartoony if you go too far up. So I do add a little bit because the other way you can soften it, and you know, typically you'll use that on people's skin and stuff like that. So we're just going to bump that up a little bit, and then I like to dehaze because it kind of brings things, like darkens things up in the background, but keeps focus on the photo, and then a negative vignette. That photo is effectively done. I like that. It's pretty neat, and you can mess around with all of this stuff. So you can remove chromatic abrasion, you can enable lens correction because your lens is concave, so this just flatten it out. You can also crop. You can, like for instance with this, my bottle is a little bit on an angle, so what we could do is we could straighten it out like this, and then that bottle is straight up, and then it just looks like this guy is a little bit out. Now when you do that, you are going to lose a little bit of your image if you're looking for the background, but the trick to that is take your photo from further away, get more of the foreground and everything in there, and then when you do those things, it will crop to a reasonable level and you'll still get a lot of that stuff in there. So this is the second photo that we're going to edit. This one, again, I've like done some auto on, and I'm going to bring that down a little bit, make it a little bit more moody. We'll up the contrast. So you can see this darkens things or lightens things depending upon how you use it. So I usually will bring this up a little bit just to kind of keep the focus on the bottle. But I really like the foreground in this shot. Everything's super sharp. It looks nice. You can see here, I'm actually a little bit blurry on that photo. A little bit. You can still see everything nicely in there. So again, I'm not going to change the temperature. I kind of like it the way it is. It's a little bit cool. You can mess around with that, but I'm not going to do that. So again, we'll up this a little bit, and you can see, like, the more clarity I put into here, like, the more interesting it gets. So I'll do that, a little bit more dehaze, and a negative vignette. So you can vignette the whole thing and have it like this if you really want. But even just a little bit, your eyes will bring, like, the vignette will bring your eyes into focus on the bottle. So subtle is fine. You don't have to go too crazy with that stuff. And again, I'm not a professional. I like hardly ever get paid for my photography. I'm volunteering to do this just because it's a lot of fun for me. So I end up sending these off to Bloom Tattoo, Holocene Vodka is going to get it, and I'm going to send these off to the Jahromi Soap Company as well on any photos that I've done for them. And then maybe we can work together in the future. So hopefully there'll be more product photography that actually comes with gigs if I send this off to enough people. We will see about that. This photo, again, they've done most of the work for me. Like, I still will mess around with this a little bit. I like having the contrast in here. I like how all of this is there, but it's kind of hugging the bottle. And they've brought the whites up a little bit, which, I mean, depending on what you want to do, you can do that, but I find it always makes things pretty bright. So we'll just bring that down a little bit. We're not going to warm that up. We're just going to keep the natural color. And again, some texture, some clarity, some dehaze, and some vignette. Now the other thing is, when you're doing this kind of stuff, if you're taking this to try and get jobs, I just aim to focus on what I think looks good. If they have something that they would recommend you do differently, then feel free to do that. I'm not saying that you know, this is a tried and true method for everyone. It's not. For me, this works. This is what I like to do. You, as a photographer, are going to figure out how you like to do your edits on your own. You don't have to follow what I'm doing because, again, I'm not a seasoned professional on this. I don't do it for money. I'm just doing this because I really enjoy taking photos and the content is cool. So then we jump into this one. This is a pretty similar one, except we got a little bit of pine cone. So again, texture up, clarity up, dehaze up a little bit, and then a vignette on there. And I can show you too, like, you can take your greens down. So if you want to kind of get the greens a little bit less vibrant, this is where they sit naturally. That's basically the natural color of them. You can darken them like this, like really intensify that green, or you can kind of, almost desaturate it so that it looks a little bit deader and less invasive on the photo. So sometimes you watch Peter McKinnon and he does this because he doesn't like how distracting it can be. So that is the hue. Saturation, like, you can bring the greens down so that they're almost like black and white. It takes away almost all of the color out of there, which we don't necessarily want to do. We could lower it a little bit so it's not as in your face, or you can take your saturation all the way up to the other side and then it's like really, really intense. So for me, let's just do this. And then luminance is another kind of thing. It just dulls stuff down or brightens things up. And I don't typically want to brighten things up because the bottle is the focus. So even taking the luminance down just a little bit, you can see that that's really come back to focus on the bottle. That photo is effectively finished in my books. And now we're on to the soap. This one's kind of a bland photo, so we're just going to move on. I like this one. And because we autoed that one, I want to take up the contrast a little bit. As you can see, like when it's just standard, the contrast is going to kind of, it makes an interesting vibe. It does bring things kind of more into the center, and it sort of ups the blacks too, like it makes the shadows a little bit deeper and everything. I like that. That's a personal thing that I quite enjoy. And in this particular photo, they brought the highlights down quite a bit, like -71, because where I was sitting, the light was coming onto the soap, the soap label, the label. And it's quite reflectant. Like you can, I don't know if you can see it on here, but it's quite shiny. So that is why the highlights are way down. We've done quite a bit of that. And then they brought up the highlights. I'm actually going to bring down the whites a little bit. And in this particular photo, again, I want to add some texture to it, clarity, dehaze, and a vignette to visualize it. It's all subtle changes. This is just how I roll when I'm doing this kind of stuff. You don't have to do it the same way. In fact, I implore you to try and figure out what you like and what the companies that you're working for like, because everybody is different. You know, because I'm doing this for free and volunteering my time and everything, when I send this off to the companies, they might not use them, they might not like them, but that doesn't matter. I'm sending them because I want to be friendly. I want to put myself out there and say, hey, I'm available for more work if you guys want to work together. So that's effectively what I'm doing on the City Life Project YouTube channel here for these particular soaps. So this photo, it's the same thing. Let's bring up the texture. And in this one, I am going to kind of make the greens a little bit less vibrant. And I don't even think I'm going to vignette that because we have a really nice close-up photo of the soap. So we can bring those greens all the way down. They're almost yellow if you do it that way. So in the center, they're really vibrant. But I kind of want to keep them a little bit like this. We're not going to do a whole lot. Saturation too, we can lower that. And like I said, you can almost turn this black and gray if you really want to get down to it. But we want some of that BC Vancouver Island coloring in there. So we'll just do something like this. And then luminance is your light. So we can bring that up, we can bring that down, and I think I like it right there. That's a finished photo. Like I said, you guys do what you think is best for the photos that you're taking. We're going to move on here and check out. That one's kind of a cool shot. That one's kind of a cool shot. Bringing the texture up it like brings out the label quite a bit on some of these. So you just play around with these. I find clarity when you move it up. A lot of YouTube videos, like when you're looking at the thumbnail, people bring the clarity up. I think it makes it look kind of cartoony. But if you look at the histogram on here, right here, and you bring the clarity up, it kind of widens all of that. It's a cool effect. So let's just do that on this photo. And then the dehaze kind of just darkens things in the background or lightens the whole thing. So you don't want to mess around with that too much, but it is a cool tool. So one of these days I will do a photo editing workshop on how I go through smoke bombs. I have a few smoke bombs. I've done some really cool ones of my wife Jen in the past, and dehaze is a really cool tool because a lot of times when you get the smoke billowing everywhere, you can use dehaze to kind of clear things up, and it won't take away all of the smoke, but it'll kind of remove some of the stuff that you don't want, which is a really neat tool if you're doing that kind of thing. So there we go. There's another finished shot. Now I'm not going to take too much more time here because you guys have essentially seen sort of my process and what I'm doing here, and I think that you get the gist. It's not there's no science to it. Basically, you're just messing around with things to where you like them to be. Like in this particular instance, I've upped the clarity quite a bit. You could up the texture quite a bit too if you want it to kind of look that super cartoony looking thing. That's all there is to it. So anyway, you guys, I'm going to log off. That was another kind of cool, fun one. We've had half an hour. I've shown you sort of what I did this morning, and I promise you I will get some really cool photos. We've got some more steel wool photography stuff that's going to come up. We also have some smoke bomb photography coming up because 'tis the season. It rains here lots, and the smoke bombs and the steel wool are kind of winter things. You don't want to do them in the summer here. They're way too dry. So be safe when you're using all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, I'm going to log off. We will see you on the next one.